Are you ready for the truth? Bring it on!
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth?
I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Glad you're here, right here on the AFR Talk Network. I am Crane Durham. This is Nothing But Truth, and let's get it going. You heard about the woman who allegedly attempted to ram her car into the White House. And long story short, you need to check out the report from Chris Woodward, who brought you the very latest. And the report is from a congressman that she has been shot, no longer on lockdown as D.C. would be and had been since the incident took place. So we have that coverage. You'll get that at the top of next hour. Fear not. Always news at the top of the hour. American Family News, onenewsnow.com. Tomorrow at this time, you will hear Beat the Press with yours truly and Chris Woodward. That's right. Environment business reporter at One News Now, onenewsnow.com, American Family News. Just giving you a little preview, little tease. Don't tease me. I'll tell you right now, I feel like I'm being teased. President Obama today in a speech, actually this morning, came out with a statement regarding the shutdown. And you've got to hear this because it is simply amazing in light of the fact that, keep in mind, the president is against right-to-work laws, okay? He's very pro-union. So he tries to paint a picture, if you will, when it comes to the government shutdown as we know it, or the slim down. And he attempts this analogy. Roll it.
Everybody here just does their job, right? You don't, if you're working here and in the middle of the day you just stopped and said, you know what, I want to get something, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to get, but I'm just going to stop working until I get something, and I'm going to shut down the whole plant until I get something. You'd get fired. Right? Because the deal is you've already gotten hired, you've got a job, you're getting a paycheck, and so you also are getting the pride of doing a good job and contributing to a business and looking out for your fellow workers. That's what you're getting. Well, it shouldn't be any different for a member of Congress.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so how does that work with his support of unions? And isn't that, well, I won't go too far into it. He's obviously tired, and he's got to look for a reason to gin up support for his position of not accepting a year delay in the individual mandate and the idea that government workers would be treated the same as specifically members of Congress as ordinary citizens. Plus, businesses would be able to exercise their First Amendment rights with the HHS mandate. That all said, this is Thursday, and you know what that means. That's right, the chairman of Bowyer Research and Forbes contributor himself, Jerry Bowyer. Welcome.
Hey, Crane, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm going to jump here. I had two clips to play for you, and actually,
I'm still steaming from that first clip.
Right.
Well, what's going to happen with the second clip?
I think you'll have fun with this one.
Okay.
President Obama explaining the glitches in Obamacare with the exchanges says, "Hey, you don't have a problem with Apple." That would be roll it.
Consider that just a couple of weeks ago, Apple rolled out a new mobile operating system. And within days, they found a glitch, so they fixed it. I don't remember anybody suggesting Apple should stop selling iPhones or iPads, or threatening to shut down the company if they didn't. That's not how we do things in America. We don't actively root for failure. We get to work. We make things happen. We make them better. We keep going.
Is the president missing something there?
Well, yeah, the biggest thing he's missing is that buying an iPhone is a voluntary transaction under the American system of economics. However, healthcare is no longer a voluntary transaction. It's now a government-mandated transaction. The other difference, of course, is that a tiny glitch in an operating system is a completely different matter than something that's as absolutely sensitive as healthcare, which, of course, you know, the president and his party have told us how absolutely important and sacred healthcare is. So then to sort of demean it by, comparing it to you having trouble downloading your latest tune, your latest iTunes song, kind of works against, the very idea of the importance of healthcare.
Yeah,
but the biggest thing he's missing is, really, in my opinion, the real thing that the president is missing, or maybe the real thing that the whole discussion is missing, is whether Congress really is doing its job or not. And in order to figure out whether the House of Representatives is doing its job, you have to understand what its job is. Why was it created? Why did the United States create a lower house to a legislature? And they did it because they believed that there was a tendency for the presidency, perhaps, to turn into royalty, like what we had left behind in England. And they wanted to create an institution that was a guardian of the public purse against the demands of borrowing and spending from royal oligarchs and even tyrants. That's why Parliament was formed in the first place. Kings always wanted money; they were always taxing, right? That's what the Magna Carta was about. And finally, the people of England said, "I'll tell you what. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to elect a house that represents us, the taxpayers, and Mr. King, Your Majesty. If you want money, you have to go to them and ask their permission." And the king hated it, and kings have hated it ever since. And what we have in America for really the past 100 years, but a lot more recently, is presidents have tended to become more and more like kings, and so more and more they hate the legislative branch because they don't want to come cap in hand and say, "Please, may I have some money?" They just want it to be automatic. They just want the money to keep flowing. They want a line of credit that's infinitely expandable. And now we have a president who complains not only if Congress delays a little to think about it, they're castigated, they're insulted, they're called terrorists, when they're simply doing what the Constitution gave them the job to do, which is to protect the public purse from an overweening executive branch who's becoming more royalist than democratic in his approach to his own power.
In the fact that the lower house, lower branch, if you will, in Congress, the more direct branch is to the people and holds the power of the purse, as you detailed. Then it becomes an issue of, okay, those folks are impacted every 2 years.
Yes.
And so then it becomes a debate and a discussion, if you will. And it ostensibly would be between the two parties, Republican and Democrat, and possibly between the lower house and the upper house, the House and Senate respectively. Yes. But it seems, and it has been from that debate or that discussion, remember, in the healthcare summit with the president and members of Congress?
Yes.
It seems to be 2-on-1, and the person who is the greatest agitator to the debate, the man who is throwing kerosene on the flame, what he is doing is he's trying to advance his position by belittling the opposition.
Yes.
And so I'm going to ask you this. Here is the president speaking to the issue of the markets, sloughing off the government shutdown, slim down. But he takes it up a notch here in an interview with CNBC. And here is his response with the markets, should they worry, in essence, is this like every other time? And the president said this, clip 2, roll it.
No, I think this time's different. I think they should be concerned. I had a chance to speak to some in the financial industry who came down for their typical trip. And I told them that it is not unusual for Democrats and Republicans to disagree. That's the way the founders designed our government. Democracy's messy. But when you have a situation in which a faction is willing, potentially, to default on U.S. government obligations, then we are in trouble.
Jerry Bowyer, is the president being
Stoking
a leader
fear?
by what he is doing?
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that.
yeah. Let me just make a couple of comments about what he
Yes.
said. Let's get past the idea that this is a disagreement between two co-equal branches of government. When it comes to the matter of public spending, it is the legislative branch that has the power, particularly the House. So if the legislative branch disagrees with the executive branch about a matter of spending, that's not a, hey, let's split the difference. That is the legislative branch's purview entirely. The executive is merely a supplicant in our system when it comes to spending. So this isn't some, hey, let's split the difference. I mean, it's amazing to me that he doesn't want to meet them in the middle. They're the ones who are more constitutionally, well-based in not wanting to meet him in the middle. But, aside from that, there's also this stoking of fear that's involved when he's not getting what he wants. Presidents tend to do this, right? This is right out of the Edward Bernays playbook, right? The man who invented spin, the man who invented public relations, is the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he says when you want to get the public to do something, you don't reason with them, you don't use logic, you don't use upper brain functions, you go to lust or fear. And that's how you manipulate the public. And in this case, it's fear. When the president wants more power than he's constitutionally entitled to, and when the legislative branch is doing its job as the guardian of the public purse, what you try to do is you try to break their spirit by insulting them. This is from the crowd that was constantly lecturing us about civility in public affairs around the Gabby Giffords shootings, and now they've got no problem whatsoever with throwing around words like terrorists about the Congress. So you belittle congressional Republicans who, let's face it, have shown themselves vulnerable to kind of caving into this sort of thing in the past. And what you use with the general public is you invoke terror. And what he's trying to do is get markets sort of on his side. He spoke to the Business Roundtable 2 weeks ago. He's kind of kicking big business in the rear end, saying, hey, you've got ins with the Republicans. You better start saying something, or really bad things are going to happen. If anything bad happens here, it's because the president has not prepared for what the Congress told him to prepare for, which is a limit on debt and on public spending. The president should stop spending all this time trying to figure out how to terrify people about a default and start working on a plan for actually avoiding a default, because there are plenty of assets that are available to the executive branch to avoid a default. They own enormous amounts of prime real estate in the downtown of almost every major city in America. The Federal Reserve has $3 trillion in its balance sheet, and that's owned by the federal government. They've got $330 billion of gold. There's mineral rights that can be sold. There's absolutely nothing that means that we would have to default. There's plenty the federal government can sell to pay its bills, which is what anybody like you or I at the normal human level has to do when our debts get out of control. We have to cut back and maybe even sell some assets.
What does a leader do? And specifically, with the remaining moments, we've got about 2 minutes, Jerry. What does Scripture direct a leader to do in this type of situation? If president, when in the president's position, what would he lean on in the sense of Scripture of how to proceed?
That's a great question. I guess the thing that comes to mind is in 1 Peter, and also more well-known in Romans chapter 13, we're told that rulers are there to promote public peace, not to foment division so they can gain power. The function of the civil ruler is to be a ruler under God for the promotion of public peace. But we've got rulers who are troublers of public peace rather than keepers of public peace, because deep inside, it's like Jesus says about bad teachers, who are wolves in sheep clothing. Deep inside, they have a ravening hunger for something. In this case, power, and the only way they can get power is to foment fear rather than peace, which is their job. They have a job under God. They ought to do it. They ought to be calming markets and getting ready for things rather than trying to panic markets and panic the people.
Jerry Bowyer, chairman of Bowyer Research and Forbes contributor. His latest article is part of a 5-part series in a speech that he has given. And again, if we had time, I'd go extra with him. He's incredible. Check out his work. And Jerry, always a pleasure. Thanks for making time for us tonight, man.
My pleasure. God bless.
Take care. God bless. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. On the flip side, we will have Aaron Free at the bottom of the hour and more back and forth. Harry walks back his comment yesterday. Find out what he has to say. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.
We have lost the focus in American Christianity